shingles virus. Yeah. The first one was The second one was like, ooh, man, I don't know.
My doctor warned me.
Yeah, it's a bad. Okay, if the doctor warns you,
Yeah,
watch out.
she said, be sure you have that one.
I mean, not everybody has a reaction, and
I've had really big reactions to the COVID shots too.
oh, see, no, that didn't
So,
bother me.
I,
This morning I've got like a, when you have, what's the disease?
ringworm?
No, it's kind of reminiscent of that. It's the bullseye mark when you,
Lyme disease.
That's what it looks like. There's this big red ring, and in the middle it's raised still, and you can see where the injection went. I'm like, what did she do to me?
And the first time,
it's still warm.
No.
It's awful. But I feel okay today.
Oh, good.
Yesterday, I was living on analgesics, well,
Not fun.
complain. It could be worse.
Have you ever
Could
had
get
shingles?
No.
I did.
Oh, yeah, no.
And
You did? You had it?
my trigeminal nerve, so it was all
Yeah,
my
my
face
daughter
and my
had it
mouth.
that way.
It was
Up
horrible.
by your eye, it's very
I was so
dangerous.
scared.
Yeah.
First of all, my head with no direction. Oh, it was really scary.
Kelda had it twice, and she's young, my younger daughter. She had it in her 20s, and my son-in-law, too. But Kelda had it the second time on her face, too. And they thought it was an ear infection. It turned out to be shingles.
I thought it might be a tooth even.
Yeah.
That same kind of nerve pain,
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well,
Yeah.
you won't get it now. You're done. I think.
Well, if
No,
if
they
your
say
daughter had it twice,
I still need the vaccine.
Oh, yeah, but once you get the vaccine, then you should.
but how many vaccines have there been? I've had 2 different vaccines.
I think that's it.
It's
I hope
twice.
so.
It's a 2-shot deal.
No.
No, there was an older one.
Right.
Yeah, but this one is a 2-shot.
So this is the third one?
Well, I never had the original.
Oh.
This is called Shingrix, and it's a 2-shot.
I don't remember what I had.
And but you can
I
go
just
2
keep
to
taking
2 to 6 months in between. So I waited 4 months.
Maybe I had. Figured hopefully I had it.
I've had my double dose.
There you go.
I'm just going to say good morning for all of our
Sorry,
awareness.
guys,
That's okay.
We're talking
Yeah.
about
You just turned it on.
medical.
I'll edit it.
You don't want to know.
Medical information is now all over the place. And so we've said a couple of brand name drugs too, so maybe we'll start getting text messages. Anyway, welcome to those of you who are joining in. I'm thinking specifically of Colette. Say good morning to you. And for unknown to me, anonymous people who still listen in and listen through our discussion, we are in Jeremiah chapter 10.
11.
Sorry, 10 was last week. 11. And so we'll read it and we'll see what Jeremiah has to say in lots of words today. Let's see what relevance and what connection there might be for us today. You ready to read, Barbara? Are you going to read? Are you going to read? All right.
The word that came to Jeremiah from the Lord, hear the words of this covenant and speak to the people of Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem. You shall say to them, thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, cursed be anyone who does not heed the words of this covenant, which I commanded your ancestors when I brought them out of the land of Egypt from the iron smelter, saying, listen to my voice and do all that I command you. So shall you be my people, and I will be your God, that I may perform the oath that I swore to your ancestors, to give them a land flowing with milk and honey, as at this day. And then I answered, so be it, Lord. And the Lord said to me, proclaim all these words in the cities of Judah and in the streets of Jerusalem. Hear the words of this covenant and do them. For I solemnly warned your ancestors when I brought them up out of the land of Egypt, Egypt, warning them persistently, even to this day, saying, "Obey my voice." Yet they did not obey or incline their ear, but everyone walked in the stubbornness of an evil will. So I brought upon them all the words of this covenant, which I commanded them to do, but they did not. And the Lord said to me, "Conspiracy exists among the people of Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem. They have turned back to the iniquities of their ancestors of old, who refused to heed my words. They have gone after other gods to serve them. The house of Israel and the house of Judah have broken the covenant that I made with their ancestors. Therefore, thus says the Lord, assuredly I am going to bring disaster upon them, that they cannot escape. Though they cry out to me, I will not listen to them. Then the cities of Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem will go out and cry out to the gods of whom they make offerings, but they will never save them in the time of their trouble. For your gods have become as many as your towns, O Judah, and as many as the streets of Jerusalem are the altars to shame. You have set up altars to make offerings to Baal. As for you, do not pray for this people or lift up a cry or prayer on their behalf, for I will not listen when they call to me in their time of trouble. What is right has my beloved in my house? What right has my beloved in my house when she has done vile deeds? Can vows and sacrificial flesh avert your doom? Can you then exalt? The Lord once called you a green olive tree, fair and goodly fruit. But with the roar of a great tempest he will set fire to it, and as its branches will be consumed. The Lord of hosts who planted you has pronounced evil against you because of the evil that the house of Israel and the house of Judah have done, provoking me to anger by making offerings to Baal. It was the Lord who made it known to me, and I knew then you showed me their deeds. But I was like a gentle lamb led to the slaughter, and I did not know it was against me that they devised schemes, saying, let us destroy the tree with its fruit. Let us cut him off from the land of the living, so that his name will no longer be remembered. But you, O Lord of hosts, who judge righteously, who try the heart, and I can't read very well today. Excuse me, wait. Okay. But you, O Lord of hosts, who judge righteously, who try the heart and the mind, let me see your retribution upon them, for to you I have committed my cause. Therefore, thus says the Lord concerning the people of Anathoth, who seek your life and say, you shall not prophesy in the name of the Lord, or you will die by our hand. Therefore, thus says the Lord of hosts, I am going to punish them. The young men shall die by the sword, their sons and their daughters shall die by famine, and not even a remnant shall be left of them. For I will bring disaster upon the people of Anathoth, the year of their punishment. Sorry, I think I need a different pair of glasses.
Here ends the reading for today.
Exactly. New glasses, please. Wow.
Wow. I have to make sure the sound is on for that. Wow.
Recorded all my reading mistakes. After a while,
There
the
weren't many
glasses...
mistakes, come on.
Yeah, there were. The glasses are not working for me anymore. I probably need, like,
I'm up to 4.
probably need something that looks like Coke bottles or something. Oh, what are you going to do?
Are they just for reading?
They're just readers, but I have all different strengths. And this one that I carry around is probably not the one I should be using to read here, especially fine print. And there's more medical knowledge.
That's,
What's wrong with us?
let's not talk that stuff, huh? And one of the reasons I like this is that it's easy to, it's a good size and.
Yeah. Oh, well.
So these are the thoughts that are going through my mind, questions that maybe you can help to pick apart. So what is the gospel of God? What is the gospel? What is it? Jeremiah is really upset. He is so angry with this people because they entered into a promise with God. They entered into a promise and they swore by it. And again, in my adult life, I guess in my youth, I thought, well, what was making God angry was these statues. These are statues. Statues in every corner of the street, and every
Altars everywhere, yeah.
That's what's making God angry. It's okay. Now, in my adult life, I understand. They're only symbols. They're symbols of the replacement that people have done for the living, organic, give and take relationship in life with God. That's what God wanted. Again, it's like, I feel like I'm a newcomer to this whole Christianity or Judaism thing when you realize God's initial petition, following all the mess of the Garden of Eden and, Tower of Babel and all that stuff, God's initial petition to human beings was, let's walk in life in an adventure. Let's take an adventure together. And I will be with you, and you be with me. And here's all I ask is, just don't please go off to meaningless things that in the end will destroy you and will break my heart. Can we do that? Yes. Okay, fine.
We agree, huh?
We agree on that.
Well,
And as sophisticated as the theologians make it when they talk about, there's a covenant, and there's this covenant, and all, it's much simpler. It's much more simple. It is much more simple. The God who made the universe is a God of enormous diversity and creativity. I mean, look around. And also, God who loves relationships. All parts of them, both when they work and when we're faithful to each other and when we fail. This God is up for that adventure. Up for it. And yet, it gets to the point where, like for Jeremiah, Jeremiah says, this has gone so far off the tracks. And I kept thinking to myself, again, I wish that there would be a version of the Bible that would pull some of these images of, well, you have statues to Baal, and name some of the things that they represented. You've traded a relationship with God to an inanimate object of money. I mean, Baal represented wealth. He represented progeny, children. We're going to get children by doing different kinds of sacrifices. So all of these things that would maybe come in the adventure of life, or maybe not, are now on the bargaining table. And they've made money, wealth, power, all of these things. That's, we can't control the weather, so let's have a little statue of the weather god over here. And if we pray to the weather god and we put some fresh fruit at the feet of the weather god, then tomorrow the weather will be good and the crop will be good. And I think God, who is the God of real relationships, whatever that means, real relationships, is horrified by the plastic and artificial substitutions that people put in place and think, okay, this is somehow going to take care of the anxiety of life? Is that what drives people to this? What drives people to do these things which will in the end destroy them?
Yeah. You said it was simple, the covenant.
Yes. Easy for you.
Maybe easy for some people. I don't think it's simple. I think it's because we are creatures of this world, and all of its distractions and all of its hardships, struggles, so forth, I think it's pretty easy to go off the track.
Yeah.
I do. I mean, that's what we all do. That's why we have confession
Yeah.
on Sunday morning. It's easy to go off the track.
Yeah, and
and
so-
I think our world today has made it even easier than back then.
So
Because it's accepted a lot more.
when I say the covenant is easy, I don't mean that it's easy to live it out. What I mean is, it's very straightforward.
Very straightforward. Yeah.
It's, so sometimes I'm in the frame of mind, or my heart is in such a way that I can hear, trust in the Lord in all the ways.
Lean not on your own
Lean
understanding.
not to your own understanding. Just trust in God. What is wrong with you? Trust in God. And then in the African spirituals, God has brought us on this far.
That's
God
important.
has brought us on this far.
I think that's an essential part of this covenant. God's been merciful and generous with you. He brought you out of a bad situation and put you into a good one. Now let's see what you can do in return. You need to be generous and merciful with people you deal with. And when you stop doing that, whether you put a little statue in your house or not, if you stop doing that, that's when you break the covenant,
Right.
not the little statue thing.
No, it's the sign that a relationship is
You broke it.
frozen in concrete. It has stopped. It's come to a stop. And then what follows from that, inevitably in life, is, the principle that these prophets try to say is, look, if you turn away from the master plan, which is your generosity, seeking justice, be kind to one another, because the Lord is kind to you. You turn away from those things, you reap the whirlwind in life. It's not, you don't remain neutral in this life. You become part of the problem. And you become part of your own problem. And so here's Jeremiah once again proclaiming the word of God, and he's convinced they didn't listen in the past.
I'm gonna listen to you.
Not going to listen now.
But if I were one of the people that Jeremiah's, I'm not saying that I am, okay? But it's possible for them to say, what's this guy talking about? I never made a covenant with anybody.
Yeah.
You're telling me my ancestors did? That's my ancestors. What have I got to do with this? Is it, really? I can't see God. I don't know. I see evil things happening. Why can't I get revenge? Or why can't I make money by tipping the scales and cheating? Everybody else is doing it. I don't recall making a covenant. I'm not saying that that's a good thing.
No, I
But-
hear what you're saying. I think it's
Yeah.
very legitimate. Listen, as you're talking, I hear the world around me. I hear the world we live in today. And then my mind is racing ahead and saying, okay, then the appeal to people, whether it's the appeal from the Bible or from the New Testament, is to say, okay, so you don't buy the idea that your ancestors made this promise or that the covenant is that. So why not make it now? Come into the way of life. Make the deal with God. Because God is faithful and ready and willing always for you. And that goes to the individual society. We are all a bunch of individuals. We only see ourselves as individuals. But okay, then as an individual, isn't that what I did when I was 13 years old and I got down on my knees in front of the church and I gave my life, to Jesus? And I entered into this relationship with Jesus with a promise that he would be with me, take care of me, and then the next part of what I was supposed to do is pretty weak, because it was all about basically what I get out of this is I get salvation and I don't go to hell. I mean,
Was that a big worry of yours when you were 13?
no,
Going to hell?
no. The biggest worry for me when I was 13 is if this is the way I'm supposed to go, and this is what I'm supposed to do, and this is what I'm supposed to believe, I don't want to be standing over there not.
You wanted to be part of
I
it.
want to be a part of it. Like whatever it is, I want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wrote in the flyleaf of my Bible, like I was told, there was a date when I was saved. And then the work becomes not the language of justice and mercy and generosity. The language then becomes now go out and preach this gospel to other people. Evangelize the world, because they're all going to die and you can save their lives. And don't worry about whether they're hungry or not.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, is that...
It's very difficult, I think.
I think, too, in terms of trying to think of another world or a spiritual world, that most people live in the here and now.
Right.
And are looking for shortcuts as to how to get the most bang for their bucks. So I don't think people think about hell now.
Yeah,
I don't think that.
But it's not.
I don't think that if I'm mean to someone, I'm going to go to hell. That bus or
It's gonna
train
worry.
has gone a long
yeah,
time
they're
ago.
not worried about
The
that.
Islamic community certainly believes in hell. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You are risking damnation if you mistreat other people. And,
It's very tied to.
oh yeah.
Yeah. I can see that with my Muslim friends in Uganda, for sure.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm with you. We try to get a handle on the world we live in today, at least in North America, right? Do people worry? Do they worry about the consequences of their behavior? I mean, that's what hell represents.
Mm-hmm.
It's you worried about the consequences of your behavior. And
Consequences as to how is it going to enrich me?
right.
And what are the risks, maybe, in doing something like this? But I don't think it's a moral issue anymore.
Yeah, because mostly I think when people think about risks, they go right to finances again.
Right?
It's like, risk, they keep taking a risk. Well, you can also then win a windfall from that. But this is a different...
Yeah. It's, in the Islamic community, it really is a moral decision on everything. But of course, like any other society, there are those who are like, yeah, I don't really believe that, or I'm going to ignore that because right now I want to make more money. And that's the number one complaint in the Islamic community about the Christians and the Jews and everybody else around them. They have forgotten hell. And you're not paying attention to being morally incorruptible. But of course, we are all morally corruptible. So
I think also, again, I'm thinking about this a lot. I am bombarded every day with consequences, people telling me about the consequences of how I live. Food, nutrition, nutrition, all on television and on this thing. it's warnings about how you're eating are going to lead you to suffer in your life.
Exercise or lack of exercise,
Oh,
there are a
my
whole bunch of
goodness.
things like
Yeah.
that.
That's
it-
physical.
Yes,
That's not
It's all
spiritual.
physical.
I know, but I wonder if it can,
It's hard to differentiate.
in the world that I live in, I don't hear the appeal a lot to that next level. If it's there, it's only when you do these things, when you exercise the way you're supposed to, it will minister to some level of wholeness or contentment or spirituality in you. There's that aspect of it, but a lot
But
of
you,
it.
it's all about you.
Oh, it's all about the individual.
No, you're responsible for yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, you are responsible for the society you live in also, to a certain extent, but mainly you are responsible for what you do. Hopefully you can, live in a society that is moral, and if you aren't, you're supposed to speak out against it and do something. But you're mainly responsible for yourself. And in Islam, it's like they keep saying, it's a way of life. Well, it is, because it encompasses physical stuff. Like if you don't take care of yourself, what can you expect? You're responsible for that. If you cheat people, you're responsible for what you did to other people, and there will be a consequence. So I get that. I like that idea that it is a whole way of life, that you're not, the spiritual and the physical are not divided, that it's all part of the whole, and it all means something. But it also takes a lot of thought. And we're all human, and lots of times we do things without thought. That's why there's tawbah. That's why there's asking for forgiveness. You know how many times a day Muslims ask for forgiveness? At the end of every single prayer. Astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah. And if you really mean it, you try and reform what you're doing. But it takes thought, it takes humility, and most of us don't have that.
And I
It
think,
takes time.
Yeah.
and I think the other thing that it takes, which you haven't mentioned, it takes community. And that is, in some ways, I celebrate the lessons of the 12-step movement, because the 12 steps recovery from addiction combines the physical and the spiritual. It sees it's a seamless garment between the physical and the spiritual. And they send you out from the meetings and say, go, it works if you work it. If you do what you're told, it works. And you can trust God to give you the gift of sobriety. But come back next week and be here and tell your story and tell it and remind yourself of your story. And that's kind of what comes out of the Hebrew narrative. You lost your story.
That's
You don't
what
even know who you
Jeremiah's-
are anymore.
Jeremiah's trying to renew that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I just think, in terms of trying to do church in the world we live in is like trying to paddle in a boat that's sunk. It's like, because...
At least very leaky.
Yeah, very leaky. Because I'm not sure that people, maybe even myself, I've said confessionally, I don't know if I wasn't paid, would I go to church? That's a terrible thing for a pastor to say.
Yes.
But I have to
Depends on
say...
what's going on at the church, doesn't
Well,
it?
yeah, I guess. But I saw it in my dad. My dad was a preacher in church every, like, I don't know, 45 years. And when he retired, he didn't go to church.
Done that.
He came here.
He did come here. He loved coming here. He would have been a regular attender here. But I just, it's that community piece that,
Yeah.
and people look at me, and I'm not a confrontational pastor, and they want me to reassure them that it doesn't matter that, they're tending their faith and everything, but they haven't gone to church and, I'm sorry, I haven't been there in 3 months. And they go, you don't apologize to me, you apologize to yourself, because you're doing nothing to strengthen you're doing your exercises and you're doing your yoga.
All the physical
and you're
stuff.
doing all the things, and you're watching your diet. You're getting the right nutrition, but you're doing nothing to nurture in community the sense that we all know this is really difficult. And what are we doing with the failures that we know we've had along the way? What are we doing with them? We just, just hiding them and just saying, oh, it didn't really happen,
Your fingers crossed behind your back?
I think the whole issue of entertainment enters in here strongly. I think today our society is so entertainment-oriented that it's very, very difficult to compete with that, whether it doesn't matter if it's just church or if it's anything else that's more, it takes a little work or a little commitment or whatever. It's very difficult. You've got entertainment everywhere you look.
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
And in spades in the new movements of the churches. I mean, again, people ask me all the time, why do so many people go to the church on the highway?
It's entertainment.
It's like, go and you'll see. You'll see why. I know 3 guys that play in 3 of the different bands. And they have bands and they've got lighting and they've got cues. It is a show.
It is a show.
And I used to, my brother was really a big, my other brother, not the pastor, was a really big fan of these big mega churches. And he and his wife would go and they'd join up. And one time I went with him. And they did, oh my gosh, they did a hymn.
A hymn.
They did a hymn. But you know what? Neither on that hymn nor on any of the other music that they did was anybody singing. People didn't sing. I said to him, so you have this band and nobody sings. He goes, no, they're not expected to sing.
It's entertainment.
They're entertained. They're listening. They don't have to know anything. You just come in and they clap. The music sounds like a big country western, rock and roll kind of ilk. And they can listen and get excited. I mean, the music's exciting. They'll clap their hands and go along with it, but it's entertainment.
Yes.
I don't know to what extent the old style church entertained people. I don't think that was really a part of it, was it?
Well, I think it may have been a bit. I mean, very good choirs and good organists and good preaching. All of that is at some level entertaining. However, today's entertainment is so different.
Yeah.
Everything is bigger, better, louder, more excessive, isn't it?
It's less
I
like
think-
church and more like the TV show. It's kind of, yeah.
Well, I'm not, I think I was talking about entertainment in general, and that's definitely true for these. And I think
Because
in some
if it
cases it might be.
inspires people to go out and do good, then it's doing a job. But if it's just to go and have a show,
I think there's some of each of those going on.
Poor Jeremiah, he didn't have a band. Maybe that was a problem. But I can see what he's
No
doing
YouTube
here. No YouTube, for goodness sake. But I can see what he's doing there, and I've heard in the mosque a lot, is if the ummah, your society, your community is faltering, then look at yourselves, because there's something you're doing wrong. And I think that's what Jeremiah is trying to say too. I'm not sure that that's always accurate, but if a lot of people are playing at being pious and then going home and cheating their neighbors or stealing stuff or, harming other people, then there is something wrong with the community. But no music, we don't go to church. Poor Jeremiah.
What about the whole concept of building community? That's I feel like that's again one of those things that gets pretty much destroyed by all the ways that modern families are entertained.
It's delusion.
It's very difficult if you've got all these games that are being played on Sunday morning and you've got things Saturday night that last late and are very exciting. It's very tough to center
Yeah.
your life around what's going on Sunday morning at church,
Yeah, because, I always feel like I'm playing a song nobody wants to dance to
Right.
because it's the soccer and the baseball create multiple levels of community.
They do.
And it's not just for the kids, somewhat become friends with the players on the teams, but the parents sitting and watching, turn left and right, they talk to each other, they find out who's who. They build community in a place where there is no community. I mean, I don't like to run down Franklin Lakes, but Franklin Lakes is devoid of community. These are islands of isolation. Now, maybe that's just me because I live in a manse and I'm a pastor and nobody wants to go too close to the Jeremiahs, right, to hear that stuff. But I watch to see where is, I don't know. We went to dinner last night over in Glen Rock. Now in Glen Rock, I walk into Glen Rock and I have this feeling that these people are connected to each other.
You do?
Yeah, they talk to each other.
At the Glen Rock Inn?
Yeah, at the Glen Rock
My daughter
Inn.
goes there often, but I don't think she feels part of the community. I don't know.
I-
I think it's pretty much all along, in northern New Jersey especially. You can work in the city, you come back home, your kids may play on the school team. Maybe school communities are more
Well, and I think
cohesive,
that is part of what Glen Rock has going for it.
Yeah.
I taught there, and I kind of, that was a long time ago, but still, it has a real sense of, this is our town, this is our high school, these are our elementary schools, and they really do a lot together. Where,
parades, and I've been to the parades.
yeah, they do a lot.
They
And
do the 5K, and there's a lot of community stuff.
it's also, houses are closer together. They're
That
not
makes a
all
difference
spread
too.
out.
They're close.
My kids grew up in Wyckoff, but in a little neighborhood where there were 5 families, all the same age kids. They walked to the school together, all that kind of stuff. It was very, very different from when we moved to Franklin Lakes.
Right.
and really different.
Yeah.
But not that all Wyckoff's that way, but that
Right.
neighborhood was. And I don't know if it still is. I think so. It feels like I want to drive through there.
I think you can make community, you just need to have that intention. You can, if it's not your faith community, then it will be something else, but or you can live 5 feet away from the person who lives next door to you and never really know who they
Right.
are. Your intention is to be a community.
But does it require the elements of faith and spirituality in order to create community?
No.
And I think there are a lot of people who they'll raise a glass in the bar to each other and celebrate the years of their friendship and their families have known each other, and there's no thought of God
Right.
or of the
Right.
spiritual dimension of life. There's none.
Right.
There's none. And in fact, if you bring it up, it's a real downer. Then you won't be invited to the next conversation.
Exactly.
And I think Jeremiah wants to speak to that. His question is, what are you pursuing?
Mm-hmm.
What are you pursuing? What is your, what's your longing? Have you discovered, and this goes back to my feeling about my sermon this past week, because sometimes I feel like I'm not going to bell nobody's listening to. And I don't mean this church. I just mean when I say that the scriptures teach us, and John, because it was John the baptizer, he's ringing the same bell. He's saying, look, you people, you don't get it. You always do the same thing. You charge your lives up, you run about, and you pursue the things that ultimately will destroy you and your community. So it's time, wake up, stop, pay attention. Turn
depressing.
around.
It's depressing because it doesn't change. That's the depressing part of it.
John is in the wilderness where Jeremiah was screaming, and how many hundreds and hundreds of years later, saying the same thing. So, I mean, that's why in my sermon I used that conversation with my auto mechanic who said, it's a known thing. It's a known thing. Oh, you're having trouble with your people? It's a known thing. It's what we do. And then I try to jump to, to Jeremiah's story, and what I think could be heard as a very loving appeal. Come on. Remember who you are. Remember how you got where you are. And come back. Come back to the commitments. Get rid of the false pursuits that will feel good for a couple of years or months, but in the end are going to turn out to destroy your life and your family and everything else. The pursuit of money. The pursuit of money will give you a kind of pleasure and happiness, but if you have a choice between pursuing money or pursuing hospitality and friendship, and you choose money and avoid that, there's consequences in your life for that. Now, maybe you can use the money to do the hospitality and the generosity. That's good. But I don't know. What am I
When you
saying?
say sense of community too, it's community, what is a community? It's a community of caring people who are there, supportive of each other. I was just listening this morning, they were talking on NPR about people who have had cancer and have survived cancer, but some of the other downsides. And a woman was talking about both her brother, her younger brother, and her best friend. When she had cancer, they disappeared. And they were talking about how often that happens. First of all, people don't know how to talk to someone.
Sure.
And second of all, people are afraid that it's catching almost.
Almost, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And
it gets into a lot deeper aspects of living than that superficial friendship kind of stuff, Right? And if you don't want to face that,
right. And it's mortality. But,
exactly.
what
It's
is
a lot to face.
Community. Community is not just, okay, I'll go out and have lunch with you or
Right.
meet you at the bar or something. It's being there for someone.
Yeah.
And being supportive. And, she said that she still, I think the friend, she kind of just never had anything to do with, but still has trouble with her brother because he wasn't there for her. He just wouldn't answer the phone or didn't call her or whatever. And it's not just this one person. And that's what she kept thinking was, what did I do to these people?
Yeah, no.
But it's almost a universal thing with people who get ill, that, people back off thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? What am I going to say? How can I help this person?
Yeah. But, they don't do any research to find out what they really could do they?
Right.
I mean, some people do, but
It was a
Phew.
shaping experience in my seminary. I went to seminary for 3 years, and I commuted to Philadelphia. So drive to Philadelphia every day. It was almost a 2-hour
I was
drive.
going to say it's fun, huh?
Yeah, and I would have to leave at 5 in the morning, or it was a 4-hour drive. But I met this woman, Cynthia Weaver, who lived halfway. She lived in Hatboro. And so I'd stop and pick her up, and I would take her to seminary, and we would coordinate, and I would drive her home, because she didn't really have access to a car. So as we got to know each other, she told me her story. She grew up as a Baptist in a very big Baptist church, and they talked about love and commitment to each other all the time. And they always celebrated we are really a loving, caring community. And then she gave birth to a child who was hydrocephalic.
And she was alone.
And no one could deal with what she was dealing with. And she said it was just the most shocking experience to discover that the language of community and love and support was all facade. it was facade. So what happened that sustained her was there was a Mennonite woman who lived down the block who heard about her story and for no other reason than just goodwill came and sat with her and invited her to come to the Mennonite gathering. And she she was a Mennonite when she was traveling with me now. She said, it was unbelievable the level of understanding in the Mennonite community of what it took to love and care for each other. And, she had people from the Mennonite community who would come and babysit and would take care of the child in really scary kind of situations. A hydrocephalic child, you don't know what's going to happen. And they went through surgeries to correct it. They put a shunt in, and then it didn't work. And the church, she said, the community of that Mennonite community was with her through it all. And they were unafraid. They were unafraid if the child died, they would be there with her for that, whatever. But I'm saying we don't have a lot of that. I'm trained to do that. So I got a call from the woman Joan, used to be pretty much part of this church, and I got a call from her daughter Melissa, who also attended regularly. They got involved in this church when I did her husband and her father's funeral, and they liked the funeral. They came here and they attended for a while. Well, Joan is dying. She's dying. She'll be dead maybe by the end of next week. And her daughter Melissa called me and said, will you come and visit with her? Now, I'm trained, so I can go in, and I thoroughly enjoyed my conversation with her. I just enjoyed it so much because she's got no pretense. She's like, I'm 93 years old. I'm dying. And I said, so do you find people that are willing to listen to you? No, she said, I have to be really careful because I can't really talk to my family because they all get upset and then they go away. And she said, what's for me to do? If I get upset, I can't go away. This is my lot in life. And I don't have a resentment towards my death. I embrace it. I want to use the time that I have. And I think to myself, this is faith. This is faith. And I know this, they told me in seminary, remember that when you go to visit someone, it's not you going to visit them. You represent the church. You bring the church with you. And I'm thrilled to do that, but I sometimes look around and go, how much is the church able to carry this out? Because the church exists and, we come and we go and our lives are busy, and I don't think we're able. Martin Luther King Jr. used the phrase all the time, which I would love to have had a conversation with him. He talks about the beloved community, that the church is a beloved community. And I say, well, when it has the time, when it makes that spiritual commitment, it is the beloved community. But I walk out Tuesday nights and I'm just infinitely curious. I walk down the sidewalk and I can look into the round table of 15 or 20 men who've been meeting in that room for, 30 years, many of them. And I always say when I walk by, it is the beloved community gathering together.
They have a need that's much more identifiable than our needs, I think. That's part of it, isn't it?
It is. I think it is. My friend Randy used to say, people don't understand why I make this commitment to go to meeting every week and all that. He goes, they don't understand because they don't understand that this is life and death for me. Mm-hmm. That's what's on the line for me.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what Jeremiah is trying to get his community to understand.
Yeah.
This is life and death. And maybe that's where the absence of the doctrine of hell comes in.
I think
you know?
so. I think
You know?
so. Yeah,
It's life and death.
I think so.
And so, the people preaching in those pulpits in those big churches are saying, you want to stay home? Go ahead. Stay home. Don't come to church. But know this, your life is at stake. And not just your life in this life, but your life in the life to come. It's at stake. And you can't spend 1 hour a week, to come and nurture that. I don't know. Is that what I should be preaching? That's what Jeremiah preaches?
Is that what you believe?
No.
Then you can't preach it. And if you preached it, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah. And truly,
He'd listen to few that are here, but maybe some new ones would come, yeah?
and truthfully, my ministry not only is not to preach that, but I feel like my ministry is to go around and tend to people who've been damaged by that kind of preaching.
Right, and I think you do a
who've
great job.
who have been, tormented and lied to about that. And sometimes we bring it up here. Like, come on, Jeremiah. Are you listening to all the people? Or are you just fighting with one person, one leader? But, there's Alcoholics Anonymous. I've often thought that I would like to call my ministry Fundamentalism Anonymous. There's a 12-step program to unpack the baggage that was piled on, almost like Baal. Like it's almost like a different religion to me. And helping people to unpack that, helping people to discover that God is, I don't know, maybe that's my Christmas sermon that's working up in me, Jesus, the baby Jesus, what a dumb way to approach human beings. For God to come as an infant? What, are you kidding me? Jeremiah, with all of his eloquence and all the teachers and leaders, and they cannot win the hearts of people. But the idea, at least in Christian theology, is that God took a direction that the only one that works with us. And that God showed God's vulnerability. And that God came not to judge or to condemn, but to be with.
It's showing mercy,
Mercy.
which is needed. You don't show mercy with a warrior, a giant sword, ready to cut your heads off. It's a gentle understanding and a very personal connection. So,
And then the church took baby Jesus when he grew up, and the church took him and put him in armor and gave him a big sword and sent him out into the world to crusade.
well, that's what happens I think it happens with a lot of faith communities, because after a while, hey, they're picking on us. How do we react? With mercy? With understanding? No, that doesn't work. Pick up your swords, folks. We're going to go to war. Why does everything have to be a struggle? But it's part of life, and how do you deal with it? You can either ask for retribution and revenge, like this dude that's going to lead our country now, or you can try to be more benevolent to people. Hey, folks,
That's
what do you
weak.
really need?
Yeah.
That's weak.
It's weak, but it also makes you very vulnerable
It makes
to
you-
to people who might be looking for your vulnerability.
Oh, yeah.
People that, and again, that's the Christian message, is that is exactly how people responded to Jesus. That is what they did. He offered mercy and grace, and they in favor, they offered hostility and hatred, told terrible rumors about him, and then had a mock trial and killed him, executed him. But to those, now I'm trying to quote the New Testament, to those who believed, the arrival of Jesus gave them the power to overcome and not need revenge in return.
Speak loudly at this time, please, because you just, after a while, when now I'm going to say, our government treats you as an outsider, as a lunatic, if you're asking for basic health care or housing or enough food for you and your neighbor. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? That's, you know what they'll say? That's for, weak people. We all need to pitch in and give a big tax break to the leader. And
As cronies.
is that what we need? That's not what we need. But if you have a party that says, no, I think we need to make sure that the hungry are fed and the unhoused have decent housing, and we show a modicum of generosity to one another, then you're an idiot. You shouldn't be in politics. That's not what it's all about. Unfortunately, I think that's kind of where people are starting to end up. Be mean. It pays.
Well, and this is a terrible thing to say, but it was part of the environment at Grove City College, these Christian college, that had their own version of Christian economics. And believe it or not, they didn't believe in a lot of charity to the sick, because what the sick should do is they should die. They should die. And these soft-hearted people that are going around extending the lives of people who, by all rights, would be dead, are putting a drain on society. I don't know if I told you, there was a program, World Vision did a Let It Growl on college campuses, where you gave up your meals for Friday through Monday morning, and the caterers would agree to know, you signed up so they knew they didn't have to do your meals, and then they took the money that was for your meal and gave it to World Vision for hunger. And one of the things the year that we did it was they were buying mosquito nets to fight malaria, which was out of control in one of the countries that we were learning about. And there was a debate between the chaplain, Bruce Thielman, who I loved, and the head of the economics department. They did a debate. And the head of the economics department said, in the name of Christ, you are the biggest fools in the world, because you give these mosquito nets to all these people and help them to defend against malaria. You are going to cause the largest population explosion you've ever caused on the earth. And as a result, we're all going to suffer. And he believed that mosquitoes and malaria were God's way of controlling the population.
The Nazification of the church.
Yeah,
I mean, that was the Nazi
well, yeah, and
idea.
it's also...
Get rid of the infirm and those who were going to be a burden on society,
Well,
and the rest of you will be richer for it.
And God, this is how far they went. God is teaching that lesson, because that's how the survival of the fittest works. Look around in nature. Nature doesn't send one deer out to pick the wounded one up and make sure that...
And the elephants, they do.
The elephants, they do.
So you can look in
They
nature and
do.
see other
And we have
examples.
deer.
That's right. So there
We
are...
have a deer by us that has had a broken leg for 3 years now.
What?
Her leg was broken, and when I first saw her a few years back, it was dangling. But, of course, she didn't have it set, so it
Shorter
So
and...
it's set
it's
crooked.
set crooked. But she's had fawns the last 2 years. None of the deer population has excluded her from deer society. She's still there, and every time I see her, she's the only one I don't yell at for eating my bushes.
Good for a little extra, huh?
But, yeah, so, I mean, even in nature where you think it's dog eat dog, there's
not
still,
always.
expressions of mercy.
This whole malaria thing, that economics professor did not concern himself with, or maybe educate himself about what happened in the United States. I mean, we're here because, and we're going to have to use mosquito nets because of science and because of the activities that were done to eliminate malaria here in the U.S.
Right.
That's okay?
Well, we did that for ourselves.
That's so disgusting.
Well, it is disgusting. It was nauseating. I just...
Oh my goodness.
Because I still, and it's part of what sometimes shifts me into a kind of stupor these days, because I thought, oh, you know what, that's a little
That was
fringe.
it.
That was a fringe. It's mainstream now.
Well, and people don't even have to get into the reasoning like he did. We don't want them to
No.
overpopulate. That's all they have to.
No, they don't even have to know that. All they know is, my confirmation class, my first year at the Ewing Presbyterian Church, I wanted to quit, because every one of them from the high school they were believers in the survival of the fittest. They didn't like anything that was coming from the implications of the gospel, of caring for the weak, making sure that, you give money to the poor. Like, this is counter what is built into, it's dog eat dog, and they loved it. They were like, this is how it works in the world.
They don't understand
I
survival of the fittest
No.
either, because that is community. It's not just one individual. It's the community that has to survive. Otherwise, that species dies out.
Right.
I mean, a little bit of knowledge is a really bad thing.
Damaging, it's, and again, I held forth in the confirmation class and said, you people are just evil. You've been affected by evil. If you think that the world is going to be better off because we become heartless and cold to those who are in need, you haven't seen the history of the world. You haven't understood. Like you said, how did we survive to today? People go.
Someone help me.
Yes, someone help.
Someone help my
That's
mother.
right.
They did. It wasn't.
Why do we have hospitals? Why do nurses get up and go in and minister to people who they may get sick from?
Exactly.
That's stupid.
It takes a village. Yeah.
And so these young people graduating from high school were going out to pursue their own interests.
That generation
Their
was
own
tough.
interests with a passion.
I'll never forget, I dropped my older daughter up at Syracuse University, and she came in and met her roommate for the first time, and the roommate already had a big poster on the wall, said the purpose of education, and it was like 4 or 5 cars lined up, Maseratis, Lamborghinis, and I looked at my daughter, and she looked at me. Needless to say, they weren't roommates for too long, because she ended up,
Moving.
it's kind of, it's not a joke actually though, because some people actually believe that the purpose of everything in life is to get more than somebody else.
He who has the most toys
Wins.
Wins what?
Yeah, right.
Just win. You're the winner.
Yeah, that's very important, isn't it? Now,
I used to tell my kids when we were going through the struggles of borrowing money for college from the government. Now from private interest, because the government sold out their loaning program, and we were signing up for 21% interest loans. And my kids were like, Dad, and I had this phrase that I said, and I don't know if I really believe it, but I said, well, the one that dies with the biggest debts wins. You can't take it with you. It's not the money. You can't take the debt with you. But that's what Jeremiah is talking about. He's talking about the little statues of Baal that are in everybody's house. It's like, what are you living for? What are you dying for? What are you going to school for? What really is it? You know what? And I thought in the 60s, the generation of the 60s was supposed to have explored all this and produced a generation that had a deeper understanding of purpose and meaning, and war was going to end, and all that.
And we had that zeal for like 10 minutes. and then
I
we
actually
became,
think it did some good.
well, I hope so.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, think about the civil rights movement. It did some good.
It did.
Women's rights.
The women's rights movement, it did some good.
yeah.
I mean, really, we can't get so down on everything.
No, and it's a foundation of that's there, and I think sometimes we can take it for granted too. We let other people.
But I'm
tell
old
us.
enough that I lived through that,
Yeah, and it shaped our world and our life. I think it's part of why there are so many people who are so much more open to the care and protection of vulnerable people. I mean, there are. They're just volunteers and organizations of volunteers and legal defense funds and all the things that are at work. It's a big job. It's a big job because the greed and hostility still tend to win out.
I think it's this particular time
Yeah.
when we had hope for something and then it was dashed. And now we're just, I don't know about anybody else, but it's just been very depressing
It is depressing.
and scary. So listen to Jeremiah.
You can make, the other thing I think a lot of, the hippie generation learned, you can make a lot of money. You can make a lot of money. And money goes a long way to helping you find that nirvana or that peace that you thought you were finding in the simple things of life. My daughter and my son-in-law have stepped out of what I would call regular life, and they've stepped into the stream of phenomenal wealth in terms of their income. It's mind-blowing. And, they got hooked up with the banking institution, and she's in regulation for banking, from the banking side. And so they want her to be friendly to them because she helps them sign off on big deals, multi-million-dollar deals, and she looks over the regulations and gives her stamp on it. She makes, I'm going to get to the point where I won't even know her anymore because she lives in with such wealth. And she never had that ever. And I always tell her, you couldn't even balance your checkbook when you were a teenager.
How old is she now?
Right now she's 31.
Wow, that's young to be handling all that.
And her husband loved this man. He went to school to be a therapist, and he worked on the campus of one of our state colleges, Montclair, I think. And he was a student therapist, so students would make. He's got a depth of understanding and life which are just wonderful. Then his friend came to him and said, "Hey, how much money are you making?" He told him, of course, that would be nothing. And his friend said, "Well, I'm going to start a internet security company, and I want you to be my partner." So he said, "Okay." So they formed this company, and they did it for about 5 years, and they got bought out by,
That's where the money comes.
and they got a massive purchase for it, and then they offered them to come back to work for the company.
It's all wonderful if you can have a life,
Yeah.
because a lot of times when that happens, you're working, Greg was working for Goldman Sachs as a vice president. They thought he had landed, but he had no life.
Right.
And what do you do with this money? And how do you live your life? You can live it for good, or you can get caught up in, the stuff.
Well, and that's
And, that you're
Jeremiah.
living for the money, the work becomes all important. But, I'm sure there are people who do it. So
I mean, who do it and do well and
Yeah,
survive well.
saying and can do, yeah, sure.
I think she's too young. Unfortunately, I think she's going to have to fall down some stairways. And I'll be there, but I'm not going to try to tell her in advance because that's important.
You can't.
That's tough, so.
It's life.
You
Let's say
think,
to Jeremiah.
you think that, everything is hunky-dory then, because, you're always afraid, what if they don't have a job? What if,
Oh, right. Agree.
they'll-
And then they got a job that's like, yeah.
Yeah, they get a job and they're going on in their life and they call me up and say, "Dad, you okay? Do you need help?" No, just just please take care of yourself.
Right.
In some ways, I worry more about not just her, but the people that are in those settings than I do people who are poor. You know, the poor are more generous than the rich.
Yeah.
But
How is
there
that
are rich
possible?
people who are generous.
That's
Yes.
true, there
Yeah,
are.
It's a mindset, and, I think, I know there are people, I have neighbors who do phenomenal things. I know one of the neighbors in Kiloam does phenomenal things in hospitals in Haiti. They made a lot of money. I'm not saying they're living in a shack, but,
Yeah, but they're still, they made it. They made it through the snares. The things that distract and destroy people. I know it's archaic and ancient language, but I think Jeremiah is still talking about that.
Absolutely.
He's talking about looking out at this people who had received bounty upon bounty in the history of their lives and took it for themselves and began to then think, well, I'll figure out another way to multiply this.
Yeah. And I think you're right. You have to look past the idea that he's only talking about these little shrines they're setting up. It's what they're doing with their lives. Not those little idols don't mean anything. It's the bigger idol that we've got to be concerned about. And for us in America, it's always comes down to wealth, what people will sell out for.
And I think, I haven't looked at it much in detail recently, but I think it was also about sexual behavior. There was a great belief that, counter to sex functioning in life, as even recreation, whatever, and being a part of the normal life, these little statues were part of religions that said sexual encounter and the immorality of it, just having sex and practicing it, that's God. That is God. And so the cultures of sex, and that was also surrounding them. That it was a way to find happiness and meaning and fulfillment. But it also was destroying their lives. And then I don't even know how my kids survive in the world we live in today. Because you can get really sheltered from how, I'm really going to sound like an old man, but how promiscuous. But it's
It is.
unbelievable.
It's scary.
It's just,
Really scary.
the morals about money are just the morals about sexual practice. And it's just one more thing. I mean, it's just, it's nothing. It's nothing. And again, the idea of, are we capable of relationships and deep things with commitment to each other? Why get involved in all that?
So what's Jeremiah got for us next?
Please.
I mean,
Wait.
is he taking us somewhere? I don't think so.
Oh, please.
I don't think so.
I was really struck by this, the verse, but I was like a gentle lamb led to the slaughter. I did not know it was against me. They devised schemes saying, let us destroy the tree with its fruit. Let us cut him off. The whole thing is so repetitive, isn't it, throughout Scripture?
It is. It's we don't like the message we're hearing, so let's kill the messenger.
The gentle lamb.
It's still going on. Still going on.
Yep. All right, so what do?
We keep reading and we keep believing,
Keep on.
and we remind ourselves that God is not absent from the world, but that God is engaging all the time. And somehow we become the messengers of that as well, as we seek to be able to live out and not just judge other people, but to look at our own lives I mean, look at God. God is listening right in and shining right in on our
Isn't that
little
nice?
gathering
This little
today.
light of mine,
was the
I'm gonna
approval.
let it shine.
That's
Oh,
the
yes.
star. I know, that's the
yeah,
Star
look
of
at that.
Bethlehem there.
Oh, that's very cool, the way that happened.
I gotta turn this off.
Okay.
Thanks for joining today, people.
You guys have
Confirm your
a
appointment.
mission